What is going on, everybody? We are back with some more Marvel Snap, and today I wanted to cover the new patch that we got. It's causing quite a stir. Nexus events are here. We'll have another video coming on that very shortly, but first I wanted to talk about the patch notes that we got. And there's a whole lot of stuff in here, so strap in, grab a snack. It's probably going to be a long video. Probably going to spend the least amount of time talking about balance today, actually, because we have a lot of other changes to talk about. So, Nexus events are introduced. They are kind of the super hot button topic of this patch, and we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about those, but we'll save that for the later in the video. The weekly mission system has been changed, so if you want to take a look over here, now you get it for up to 35 missions, and each one of these gives you 100 credits, 10 gold, and season pass. And then as you go up, it gets better and better. I think you still wind up with net more than you did before, but I have to run the numbers on it. Either way, it's just kind of better checkpoints, a little bit better along the way. And then they did some UI, and back into the patch notes we go. So they updated the collection level. So this is kind of trying to adjust that when you hit a certain collection level, you got cards every 96 collection levels. And before that it was 48, and it goes down from there. So they made changes. They replaced a lot of the cards with collector's caches. And as well as the mystery box. These collector's caches can, before certain levels, they can hold up to 50% chance of, of getting a card. Then after that, it's a 25% chance of pulling a card. So what this should turn into in practice is, before this 1500 collection level, your rate of card acquisition should stay almost completely the same. However, you should get more credits, which should mean you actually climb the ladder quicker. And then for people past 1500 collection level, I believe they said you should get cards at roughly double the rate you were previously. So as a whole, players getting more credits and gold is better. I am of the opinion, I know a lot of people didn't like mystery boxes, but mystery boxes now having a chance to hold cards, variants, credits, gold, basically everything. I'd rather take that role than get 50 credits or 10 boosters. So I think the collector's caches are a pretty good change. And as long as in practice it winds up being the same pace for early players and then improves for better player or later on players, I think it's a really good change. And I think it was actually a really big buff to the economy that is kind of getting overshadowed by the Nexus event kind of hoopla. But I want to give the devs credit for this change because this was a massively requested change, and I think they came up with a pretty decent solution. Obviously, we have to keep monitoring and see how it works in practice, but I think at least on surface level, this looks really solid. Can now leave emoji responses on cards after they've been played. I didn't even notice that the first time I read the patch notes. That seems a little silly, but it's fine. Upgrade visuals have been changed. The animation's a little bit slow, which is kind of a pain, but it's got a really cool effect that plays in now. It tells you exactly what upgraded on your card. So like if you go up to uncommon, it'll be like frame break, and then it'll go animated or frame animation, which I think is pretty cool. Probably needs to speed up a little bit, but I think that was a really cool visual upgrade. This is another interesting one. These seasonal rewards after level 51, instead of just giving you 50 credits, they can contain credits, boosters, gold, and variants. I like that the caches for past level 50 can now give you more than just credits. The booster thing hurts a little bit because I feel like players who often are going to be going past level 50 don't need boosters. So boosters being included there is probably not that great, but depending on the amount of credits and gold you can get, and then sometimes rolling variants, I think that is a net upgrade. Just depends on how often boosters are getting pulled. They have gone back to limiting credit purchases in the shop to once per day. That's fair. It's just another way to kind of slow down paying players getting ahead of everyone else. Let's see what else we got in here. This is kind of a big change. So mission progress only saves if you're in a tutorial, if you finish a game, if you retreat after a snap, if you retreat after turn 3, or if your opponent retreats but you didn't. So for things like win a location with less than 10 power, an easy way to cheese that used to be like play Squirrel Girl and retreat and you'd get credit for 3 zones. You cannot do that any longer. So some of the missions are probably going to get more annoying to complete, but I think it was probably a necessary change. Probably feels a little bit bad. We got some added visual effects, which I think is always really cool. Audio upgrades also really cool. Let's go over the balance changes really quick. So Chavez has gone from a 6'10 to a 6'9. This is actually, I was in the middle of making a video about why I thought this was necessary when they released this patch, so I guess we'll just talk about it here. Chavez, being a 6'10, she's so close to other 6-drops that she kind of is just a no-brainer to run. She improves your draw consistency for the rest of your deck so much, while also being within 1 to 2 power of all the other 6-drops in the game. I thought she was just probably too good, and one of the only 6-drops worth running, unless you're in a very specific type of deck. So I've actually been kind of campaigning that she should be 9 cost. Well, I was saying she should either be 9 cost, or basically all 4, 5, and 6 cost cards in the game need to be buffed. So I said, realistically, changing Chavez to a 9 is more doable. I think it's a perfectly fine change. Chavez is being run in like every deck. It helps you draw better, helps you run your game plan better, and in exchange for that draw consistency, there should be a slight drop in power. Crossbones, just a text update, so it doesn't mean anything. Ebony Maw has gone from a 1/6 to a 1/7. I think it's a good change. It was really hard to be worth playing since you kind of shut your own lane down. It makes playing it with 0 a little bit more rewarding. And I guess in a theoretical world, you could play like, if you have Ebony Maw in your opening hand, you're playing almost like a zoo deck. You could play like 1-drop on turn 1, 2 1-drops on turn 2, and then on turn 3 drop Ebony Maw, and then you'll have filled that lane anyway. So there's probably still there's some uses here, so him getting a little bit of bonus power is nice. Still don't think he's going to be like a meta choice, but him being more playable, I think it's good. He's an interesting card. Ghost Rider. So this is a relatively minor change, but I think this is them testing the water to see how much they can kind of slow this card down a little bit before they try and make bigger changes. Because there's no good way to nerf Ghost Rider's effect without getting either very complicated or lengthy text. So they are going the simpler route, which is what I always expect from this dev team, is choose the simpler route first, and they're going to increase his cost to 4. So if you aren't aware, Ghost Rider, he brings one card that you discarded back to this location. So what a lot of people were doing was playing it with Lady Sif to discard something like an Infinaut, and then you can play Ghost Rider, which is a 3-cost card, 3 power, and then he also pulls back a 20 power card to the location. So you can still do that, just Ghost Rider costs 4 instead of 3. I still think it's going to be doable. Ghost Rider is still going to be a very good card. It's just going to be harder to play like Ghost Rider and something else on 6, which I think is fair. Ghost Rider may still need additional changes, but I think that's a fine way to test the waters for now. So, Hulkbuster. So, what Hulkbuster does right now is he combines with a card and adds his power, but also his cost to the card. So, like, if you added Hulkbuster to Deadpool, Deadpool would become a 5-power card, but it also costs 5, or costs 4, if you bounce that Deadpool back to your hand. So the change they're making here is now that's not going to happen anymore. If you bounce that Deadpool, it would be still 1 cost with the 5 power, which I think is a very good change. It gives Hulkbuster some more flexibility outside of strictly like move decks. So that's a very good change. Jubilee got a slight change, mainly because of Chavez. Now instead of pulling the top card of your deck, she's going to pull a random card from your deck. In general, this probably leaves her mostly the same. However, it does make her quite a bit weaker because guaranteeing Chavez was one of the main kind of uses for her. Now that it's random, not as super strong. I still think you'll be able to run Jubilee. You'll just have to tweak your deck to make it even heavier to do so. And whether that's worth the trade-off, who knows. I still am going to play with Jubilee because she's a lot of fun. Just kind of a big change there. So now we're going into some zoo changes, and they hit zoo really hard. Way harder than I thought they were going to. So let's get into it. First things first is Khazar, which is one of the cards that I mentioned in my basic cards that you should be playing, and Khazar has stayed good since then. It's 5 power, gives +1 power to all of your 1-cost cards. They said he basically gives you too much power, so they're taking him down to a 4/4. Khazar's still going to be solid. He can give your board plus like 10 power. No reason not to run Khazar if you're running Zoo, but Zoo is going to have a hit as a whole. Then we have Okoye, who was a 1/1, now going to a 2/2, and still gives +1 power to all the cards in your deck. I think this one is really needed, because Okoye was being run in every single deck. Just being a 1-cost, and there's not a ton of impactful 1-drops, so Okoye was just getting splashed everywhere. Now it being a 2/2, it's going to be much tougher to run, but at least it should see some more variety in the early game, so I'm cool with that. This is one I actually didn't notice the first time I read through these patch notes. Scarlet Witch is going from a 1/2 to a 2/3. So I think they're just doing that because it was a little too easy and too cheap to work around locations. Now, her being 2-cost, it involves a little bit more investment if you want to flip a location. She's still going to be really good. Just might not be included because she's not going to fit into the zoo package as well anymore. I'm interested to see how Scarlet Witch goes in the future, just because 2/3 for changing a location is still playable. I just think there's going to be kind of a slapback reaction where she's probably going to get cut for quite a while before people start experimenting with her again. Next up, we've got Scorpion, going from a 3/3 to a 2/2. I like this change a lot. I thought Scorpion was a really cool card, but he came down a little bit too late and was a little bit too weak to really be worth it at 3-cost. So being able to experiment with him as a 2/2 is going to be more interesting. And on turn 2, should be able to like reduce probably 3/4 power from your opponent's hand. So that's decent. I still don't think he's quite good enough, but it's something to experiment with, which is better than he was before. Now the biggest change from all these is Strong Guy going from a 2/3 to a 4/4. So now Strong Guy can be a 4-cost 10-power card, which is still very strong. It's better than most of the 4-drops in the game, to be honest. You just can't really toss him into every single card. I think Strong Guy's kind of a strictly discard deck card now, which is fine. But if you compared Strong Guy to something like Mojo got up to 8 power, and he had 2 really hard conditions, or 1 really hard condition, 1 medium condition, whereas Strong Guy was 9 power, so even more power, and he had 1 like average condition. So it makes sense. Strong Guy's instantly one of the better 4-drops in the game. He just needs to be in specific decks now instead of like most decks, which is fair. And then they've also added Killmonger and Sandman earlier into the pools so that you can get those earlier, just so they can kind of give you counter cards. Sandman being great against kind of flood the board tactics, Killmonger being great against 1-drop Zoo. They wanted to make sure that players have access to tools like that, so they moved them up in the collection level, which I think is a big plus. So now, let's go back, and where do we have the Nexus events? Oh, there it is. Nexus events. So this is exactly, I don't even know where to begin with this, to be honest. The community is kind of on fire right now, and let me get this out of the way. Some of it, a lot of it is warranted, and we'll get into why. But I see quite a few people talking about, I thought Nexus events were going to be new game modes. I thought it was going to be like Hearthstone's Tavern Brawls. I don't know where that came from. The devs have been very transparent that this was going to be a loot box-esque situation. So I don't know where those expectations of a new game mode came from. So I think a lot of players are disappointed for that reason, and I don't know why. But obviously that's not something that can be addressed. But for the rest of it, we'll talk about Nexus events. So the way Nexus events works is you'll see we've got a bunch of new variants. Each one is headlined by 2 cards. We have one new one and then Destroyer. We've got a bunch of avatars as well. So mostly a lot of cosmetics, some variants, and then 2 cards you can grab. And then on top of that, you can also pull things like credits and boosters. We'll get to those rates down below. So the way this works is you have the super rare cards, which we have Jane Foster, Mighty Thor, which is a 5 cost, 8 power. Draw all cards that cost 0 from your deck. I don't think this card's that good, but it seems interesting and fun, so I can see why people are upset that this is going to be hard to obtain. And then Destroyer. If you already have Destroyer, this will be removed from the loot pool. So theoretically, your odds of getting Jane Foster should be higher. And we'll get to the percentages, but I think each pull you have a 1.5% chance of a super rare card. Then your variants, they've got variants for Destroyer and for Jane Foster. And then your rare rewards are going to be variants, so it looks like we have all of the Guardians. Or all of the Guardians besides Gamora. But pretty cool variants there. I like the Mantis one a lot, especially. And then a whole bunch of new avatars, which mean nothing to me, but some people may be into them. So, let's get into Nexus events. They cost 180 gold to open, I believe. I guess we'll get down to it. And each event can be opened up to 200 times. So, that being said, if you wanted every single thing from the box, all these variants, these 2 variants, these 2 cards, every avatar, it would take 200 pulls, which is obviously quite a bit of money to make that happen. I think the full participation cost is a little bit too high. So yeah, each time you open, you have a 1.5% chance to pull the super rare card. You're guaranteed to get a super rare every 50 pulls. The first time you win a super rare item, there's a 50% chance to receive either of the 2 super rare characters. And I believe the pity timer of 50 attempts, it carries over between events. So let's say you pull 25 this time around, you don't get anything. And then next Nexus event, you pull another 25. That will trigger your 50 attempt pity timer. So that's a pretty decent change, or a pretty decent thing. Then receiving rare rewards, you have a 9.5% chance, and you're guaranteed to get at least 1 rare every 10 attempts. And again, the rare rewards are, I believe, the avatars and the variants. So every 10 pulls, you get 1 of those. And then your common rewards. Where are the common rewards? I think they're down below. So yeah, 180 gold to pull. You get about 2,000 free gold per season if you have the season pass. Or if you finish the season pass and do all of your quests. So you can theoretically pull 10 times per month. I think they said they're going to run 2 Nexus events per month, which is one of the things I think they should change. If this is going to be the amount of free gold, I think they should probably just do 1 Nexus event per month or change the price. If they change the price to 100 gold, that way a free-to-play player could get 20 pulls per month. I think that would be a lot more palatable. Alright, here we go. This is what I was looking for. This is the common set, so you have about a 90% chance to pull this stuff. Being credits, you have a pretty decent grouping of credits, and then you have the dreaded boosters. I say dreaded boosters because player like myself, I play a ton. I almost never need boosters. I never need boosters. So it's a little not great of a reward, but the credits are decent. So yeah, you have basically 90% chance to pull those, 9% chance to pull these, and then a 1% chance to pull the variants or the base cards. So like in my case, I have Destroyer, so if I get a super rare, it's going to be either Jane Foster or one of the 2 variants. I believe actually it should be guaranteed to be Jane Foster the first time. I'm not sure. I guess we'll see when I do some pulls tomorrow or in the next video. So there's a lot of uproar over these Nexus events. Basically, game is pay to win, game costs too much money. You name it, it's going through the community right now. I want to say that I agree in general that Nexus events as they stand are not good enough. But I also want to say that they're not that far off. I think with a couple minor tweaks, I think these would be perfectly suitable events. And so, like, what changes am I suggesting? I mentioned before, I think pulls should be 100 gold. If we're going to get around 2,000 gold for free, I think pulls should be around 100 gold, so that if you're going to do 2 Nexus events per month, free players can get 20 pulls, so eventually, essentially 10 pulls per Nexus event for free. That's the first change I would make. The second change I would make is bump these rates up a little bit. Doesn't need to be a ton. This could probably be like 3 to 5%. This could probably stay at 10%, to be honest. Like, you could make this be like 85% and take that 4% and put it here, have this be 5%, and I think those rates would be pretty acceptable, especially if you made the cost change from before. So that's another change I would consider. And another thing I would consider, and this is probably not the most controversial, but the least likely to be implemented by the developers, is I think there should be 2 types of Nexus events if we're going to have 2 per month. One of them should be a cosmetics-focused Nexus event with, you know, variants and avatars and things like that. And then the second one should be a more card-focused Nexus event where maybe you just have the 2 new cards and a couple other things thrown in there. That way, if you're the kind of player that only wants new cards, you can kind of focus all your pulls on that Nexus event, and players who want cosmetics can focus their pulls on those Nexus events. I don't think that's as likely to be implemented. I think we are much more likely to see cost changes to the pulls, as well as maybe some rate changes. And on that front, I don't want anyone to take this as me telling them what to do, but I think a lot of players are unhappy about these Nexus events, so I am going to give some advice on what I think is the best way to see change. If you want to see change to these Nexus events, let the developers know your honest feedback in a respectful way with some suggested changes or specifically what feels bad about the mode. So if you hop into Discord and you just kind of scream, "The game is pay to win, I hate it, this is awful," obviously the developers will get the idea that you don't like something, but I think change is less likely in those scenarios. If you hop into Discord and say, at 2,000 gold per month, I think 180 gold is a little bit steep cost, I think 100 gold would be much more palatable. I think that is a very possible change that the developers would implement, and if that was kind of the consensus community feedback, I think that would be a change that is likely to occur. So I'm not saying don't be upset at the game. I'm not saying don't be hurt that kind of the cost is like this. What I'm saying is definitely share your feedback with the developers, because they've shown multiple times that they are willing to listen to us on necessary changes. They've changed the collection level multiple times. They've made adjustments. They've addressed card acquisition, which is one of the major complaints. Their balance changes have been pretty spot on so far. So the development team has shown they're listening. So my only ask to everyone would be give them the chance to continue listening and share that feedback with them. But yeah, as a whole, I think Nexus events are a miss, but we're not super far off. A couple minor tweaks, Nexus events could be sweet. And then the collection level changes, I think, are really good as a whole. I just think they're being overshadowed by Nexus events. So I am very confident that once the Nexus event dust settles, people will be happy with these new changes, and the balance changes as a whole were also pretty solid. So yeah, that's going to be it for now, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Look for the next video. We'll do some Nexus polls. I will do them so you don't have to. Thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.